But who really wants to admit to being wrong? Who wants to face that? Especially in this situation, I hadn't just been wrong for myself. I hadn't just been wrong in my own choice of following a spiritual teacher. I had invited, exhorted, in some cases even cajoled my friends, my neighbors, my community onto a boat captained by a spiritual whack job. And I told them that, I didn't even tell them, I told them this was my ship, this was my project. They could trust it. They knew me. They could trust me. They could trust the power behind it. But I never told them the truth of what was really behind it. And now that truth was going to come out. It was in the hands of investigators. It was in the hands of the press. It was soon to be picked up by wire services around the country. I had been not just wrong in my own life, not just wrong personal choices. I had been a spectacular idiot, dangerous idiot who had a spiritual idiot who had led people astray, thinking them that I was leading them to an experience that would benefit us all. And I knew if I had any wisdom at all in the midst of all this stupidity, I knew I was going to have to face it. Yes, I had been influenced by a spiritual teacher, but could I really, truly face my community, the people who had trusted me, and tell them that it was his fault? When I was the one who had carried out the investment agreements, I was the one who had told them this was my project. I was the one who had promised them they could trust me, they could trust this. Could I really turn around and blame this on someone else, no matter how much I had been influenced by him? No, I couldn't. I knew I couldn't. I knew there was, the old phrase, you can run, but you can't hide. There was no place for me to go. Even if I went to another country, another culture, I would never get away from this within myself. I knew I had to face it. One of my friends at the time, who was also an investor, and yes, many of my friends remain my friends in spite of what I did, in spite of the magnitude of my mistakes. After a meeting that we had discussing how we might possibly find other ways to pay back this money, how I could create things, how we could pull together past creative projects I'd done, at the end of the meeting, he just took me aside and he said, very humbly but very sincerely, he said, Mac, I'm just so glad you haven't just gone out behind the barn with your gun, that you haven't killed yourself, because that was the magnitude of what I had to face. And something in me knew that I did have to face it. And so I did. And I am. And I will be very likely for the rest of my life. I faced it all day long. I faced it as I wrote letters to the investors telling them that my accounts had been frozen. And I knew the alarm and the harm that this would cause for people. I faced it as I was falling asleep. I faced it as I woke up in the middle of the night. I faced it as I thought about the many people I really loved and cared about and the harm that I had done to them. I faced it when I went to prison, sitting in my cell when we were locked down, just sitting with the reality of what I had done. And I'll close this segment by just saying one thing. If you are someone who has made a terrible mistake, whatever it may be, personal, public, whatever, I can tell you from experience, though I won't be able to explain it fully here, at least not yet, that there is a kind of freedom that begins to come the minute you really stop and face the magnitude of what you've done. All the old phrases are true. What you deny grows stronger. What you run away from chases you. And so I can tell you from my experience that it's worth it, and there is a certain freedom to be gained right away, and then it can take a long time as well, and simply stopping and facing the truth of what you've done. Thank you so much for listening. More soon.